everybody. So, as everybody knows, probably knows, the internet is like a whole earth catalog, a holistic system enabling a growth and expansion of a variety of cultural movements, mirroring their lives, their social behaviors, their creativity, their interests, their styles, and so on. So this heterogeneity of digital cultural phenomena accessible in the internet offers great opportunities for research and makes and the internet makes one of the future research resources at all. Due to the cultural institutions are overwhelmed with the variety of these cultural phenomena and the increasing amount of unique, distributed, heterogeneous information. On one hand, such as the Demoscene, subcultures still appears on the edge of the scientific domain. And on the other hand, the scene itself is contributing most to the preservation and historical examination of its cultural heritage. My contribution is to strengthen interdisciplinary scientific research and in particularly Demoscene research, and in this context to develop a shared, sustainable, interoperable framework model to describe the scene and to integrate all resources in order to analyze and to understand the Demoscene. So I concentrated on this for several years, and I came to the following conclusion. How we can understand the Demoscene best. So, Demoscene events are the center point of the scene. So probably if you like to understand the Demoscene, you have to be at the Demoscene events. And moreover, you have to, of course, know the production released at these events. You have to know the groups, their members, and so on. But when we think about how awesome it is to, let's say, travel to every Demoscene event, you will find out it is really fantastic, but to be at every Demoscene event. But at the same time, it is, well, not really practical, because it's even hard to be at every event at the same time, and even to travel to each event, probably. So, traveling to every Demoscene event is quite impractical. The same applies to Demoscene productions. You have to watch every production and, well, think about the 60,000 prods already released. It's quite impractical, but of course really awesome. Alternatively, you could pick few events or study a series of events, and quite carefully, and it would be much more practical, but of course not so awesome. So I think we should come to that point where research is very practical and awesome at the same time. Indeed, it would be awesome to be able to access all relevant information without big effort and to analyze the Demoscene, let's say, by a click of a button. Let me tell you something about Demoscene resources. So the scene is providing an unaccountable number of online archives, portals, websites, electronic newsletters, video documentaries, and so on. Not to forget the remarkable bibliography maintained by Gleb, Marco, and Antti. So these resources are characterized as genuine, constantly raising, more or less directly accessible, and implicates an unmanageable amount of semi- and unstructured data. also fragmentary and, of course, distributed, but authentic, with a large expression variances. So, but these archives are private. They have to be considered, let's say, yeah, some limited regarding validity and quality. So, for example, global archives such as POET and DemoscIenCe have different research, have different foci on content, and their inventory is also different. Or, for example, you have a lot of information available, but due to the reason, DemoscIenCe productions are described different and classified also different. So it's really hard and difficult to understand the scene from an external point of view and to analyze and even to compare this information. So following the vision of the semantic web developed by Tim Berners-Lee in 2001, a suitable solution would be to connect and integrate all resources of the DemoscIenCe on base of a huge graph. So therefore a layer of structured data needs to be added and published to allow information exchange and data processing on a granular level and to provide flexible and inference and reasoning possibilities. So ontologies are really relevant in that context and are needed to organize the distributed information available on the internet and to build causal relationships between relevant resources. So I studied the DemoscIenCe for some years, and I studied the resources as well, and developed a conceptual model to describe the scene by providing a formal structure and based on a standard of museums for documentation and exchange of cultural information. So this HTML browser allows browsing through the concepts. Each concept is being described. Louder. Okay. Each concept is being described, and you can browse through these concepts. For example, everything is just centered around the DemoscIenCe artifact. If art or not, we don't have to discuss this here. These artifacts connect all relevant resources. So, of course, DemoscIenCe productions have an artwork title. These titles can include special characters, for example. We do have categories. We know this from the global archives as well. We do have release dates. Around 25% of all productions, the release date is not documented, but the release can be dated, the first release can be dated back to 1978. So, moreover, we have the description of platform configurations, so to ensure the interoperability of the original program file. The platform it was designed for must be known and reconstructible. Usually recommended minimum and maximum system requirements, including graphic card specifications, processing power, runtime, and so on, are described. But, for example, details about tools or for creation are mostly missing. But when we follow this path, we and think about the description of platforms more precisely. We do have, of course, something like a platform name, but we also have a specific platform configuration. And this platform configuration, for example, allows a classification of platforms. Let's say like a PlayStation 2, for example, is a video game console. And with this little classification, we can, for example, extract all video game console-based artworks. Then we have, of course, several publications. Another really important part is the artwork composition type, or let's say the description of, or the classification of structural characteristics of artworks based on the arrangement of visual elements and in scenes and sequences. There we can come to the conclusion that an artwork can be cyclic, random, and linear. And we have also a number of scenes and settings which varies. Okay, moreover, of course, we have screenshots. Then we have the award. This concept allows us to integrate also new awards like the Meteorics. Okay, Meteorics. So, and we can then, of course, also compare specific art award categories. The same we have for festival competitions. And of course, as I already mentioned, DemoscIenCe events are really important. So we have to think about precise description of these event concepts. For example, we have, of course, the website. We have short and long appellations. We do have an event location. This event location has an identifier and also geographical locations based on longitude and latitude values. Let me show you another path, the production creation. So the description of artwork creation process is quite complex, including, on one hand, the DemoscIenCe groups and the DemoscIenCe people, but also in relation to specific artwork object parts. So it is, we described to the DemoscIenCe artworks in relation to visual effects, themes, references, images, symbols, and music, for example. And found out that this allows, of course, a new classification of DemoscIenCe artworks. This model has been implemented. This model has been implemented and supported by WSCI, a virtual scientific research infrastructure developed by museums and research institutes from Nuremberg, Erlangen, and Bonn, and then populated with real data. So we can have a look on that system. And we do have, of course, the artworks, including the screenshots. We can browse, or let's have a detailed view on an artwork, including the common information you already know from other portals, like the title, the type. Here we have the platform, but we do have here the little classification. PlayStation 2 is a video game console, so we could look for other video game consoles, and in this, of course, further to specific artworks. Then we have the artists, we have the group, we have the events and the competitions, and so on. We also can search for specific artworks. Let's say something like, I tested it already, of course, core. So probably this system will give me all titles, including the string core. Here we are. And let's go to this one, because my research focus is on Atari VCS artworks. So we have additionally annotated these artworks, and with these artworks parts. So it's now possible to browse through specific visual effects within these Atari VCS artworks, for example. So these are other artworks, including, for example, raster bars or sine curves and so on. So these are the whole list of visual effects we are using currently to annotate VCS artworks. And of course, we have detailed view on artists, including presented at specific events, and the artworks is or was current or former member of the group Aggression, having some created artworks here as well, and the presented events, and so on. Furthermore, we have specific views on the events, like, for example, the released artworks and in relation to the rank they received. Yes, so this is the current state of the prototype, and so let me give a short conclusion on that. First of all, DemoscIenCe, I presented here, is not just another archive or another portal. It is an approach to, let's say, prepare DemoscIenCe data for scientific research or recycle DemoscIenCe data for scientific research. It also supports the long-term preservation of this digital cultural heritage within an institutional context. And of course, the integration of this huge amount of data on one hand is challenging, but on the other hand also is beneficial. An overall picture of the scene can be drawn without distorting the different description variances existing in these different portals. And this supports also the identification and the definition of scene-specific concepts and also terminology. In contrast to existing solutions, the focus of the semantic prototype lies on the relation between the concepts. So on base of these relationships, it is possible to really compare concepts quite precisely and to generate different views, let's say, on social cultural structure or the presentation or production practices. Visualizations are crucial in this context, and even to mediate this huge amount of information. Let me give you another example. For example, when you like to visualize the VCS, the geographical distribution of VCS artworks, you have to extract some data, but then you can, for example, here we have the data already extracted, visualize this data based on a map, because you do have the geographical locations, and you do have, of course, the timelines, and so on. So if you're interested in VCS artworks, you can, for example, see that particularly the revision, and also here in Danzig, yes, is one of the most important events for the scene. And it's quite interesting that they have started more or less in 2011 at the same time. And what is probably the first event? It is here near to München. Why it is München? Well, it's Bünzli. So the first VCS might be released at Bünzli in 2005. And of course, you have a list. You can browse through these artworks as well. One focal point of DemoscIenCe is the description of the creation process. So including content, composition, and visual effects. So this approach will be further followed in the next project phase, and as it already happened with the VCS artworks. So the DemoscIenCe is invented to interdisciplinary participate on DemoscIenCe, let's say. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, hello. Is anybody currently doing science with your data, which you gathered? So is it an active thing, or are you just starting up this project and waiting for people to come to do science?
Both. So, of course, as it is let's say, a research repository, we have to, the data is a little bit older because I started the project in 2014. The data comes from 2014, so you have to renew, of course, the data set. And it would be nice to integrate more resources as well. But currently, this let's say, model, including the prototype, is part of a research project called DARIA, which is a European research project looking for some interesting use cases in regard to develop research repositories, and in particularly web data, web cultural heritage, digital cultural data is quite complex, and so this use case is perfect on one hand. And I have a collaboration together with Daniel Botz, and we made a research proposal for another research project, and we are still waiting. So yes, both.
Which kind of proposal do you make? So what's being watched, or what do you want to investigate?
We would like, first of all, investigate the description, the semantic description based on semantic technology, the semantic description of the demo scene. It's not easy to, let's say, combine different views of different disciplines or different people, or let's say integrate different archives having different description of artworks. So even the integration of heterogeneous information is the research focus at this point. But we are open for other research. For example, the data is there, so you can really draw nice pictures or make some interesting correlations between people, between geographic distribution. Or my specific focus is the creation process of artworks.
Hello. Do you see any impact in any social impact by the demo scene regarding your research of the demo scene, and is there any political influence or art influence created by the demo scene itself, what you can see?
You mean if my project influences some other areas, or
no?
The other one?
Your project can maybe reveal some hidden information about influences.
I don't think so that we can make visible, let's say, some old hacker or cracker scenarios, because this information is actually not really accessible right now. So if there is nobody manually adding this information, you have no chance.
So we have to wait until this data is added to find coincidence in
well,
points.
It's research on one hand, and it's history on the other hand. Well, let's wait another 70 years, and probably we are out of that business.
70.
T.
If I understood you right, it's you brought that demoscene topic to some researchers that never have heard of it before, especially the art history scientists, etc. I think this is a good step. And regarding revealing hidden information, I think last year you had a talk here where you showed that you could prove the success of artworks, or measure it, and even have an indication by the arrangement of the scenes if they are random. So I think there's small insights or revelations from time to time. Yeah.
Of course, you can generate some hypotheses and try to prove these with the system, but at this point you don't have to be feared. This data is not in this prototype, but of course it is available in the internet. It just depends on what kind of resources you are connecting to.
The internet memory is a little bit limited.
Limited, but
I would say the mid of the 90s. Before that, there is only limited information available. How do you manage that?
Well, from my perspective, it is like I'm coming from a cultural institution, and we are starting to not only make science, but also we take care about our cultural memory. And we don't have any concepts in relation to digital cultures. So this is just a brand new topic. We don't even know what to select. So we do have to make some decisions, probably together with the scene or with these subcultures, to select specific information. At this point, the scene itself is just writing its own history over and over again. So probably
and beautifying it.
And probably we should just, because I think this scene is really good for that use case because it's so active and it has a really good history already, and it is digitally descripted through and through. So it is really a good use case to start up and to show, let's say, the huge cultural institutions how to write and how to make some
Thank you
history.
for your work.
You have to start somewhere, right?
You have to
start somewhere.
Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe I'm repeating it, but I think the important step is to get a global visibility for the demo scene. And also, if you think about preservation, I understood that you used an existing model which you
adapted,
extended or adapted, and this is very important to official institutions, I guess. So that's probably...
You can think of this huge graph. So if you would publish, I mean, we are going to publish this data open, as linked open data, and you can connect on base of that metadata model, that ontology, demoscene resources with other resources. Let's say, for example, with music archives or with game archives or some other visual and audiovisual archives, whatever. So this is actually the first step to really build a huge graph and to allow global reasoning and inferencing. It's huge. Okay, so thank you.
Do you know that there's already an active demo scene also doing research in this subject, more or less? Gleb Albert, Dipswitch?
I'm connected with Gleb.
Yeah,
So Gleb is, yes, Gleb is researching the transnational, it's not my topic, so probably this archive could help him to open and reveal his research questions.
And also we had, I think 2 or 3 years ago, at the Evoke Demos party, we also had a research team there. and they presented also their research. Do you know about them? I can look up their names. Just throwing names and connections in the room.
I'm connected actually with these researchers, and
Great.
yeah. Of course, I did not draw any conclusions here about the data, because I think it's your work. I mean, you can yourself reveal relevant information if you like. I'm just presenting a model, and without distorting the other archives.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no hands.
Hi. Just one question. Is there any chance to collaborate with the original archives? Like, because you said you retrieved these data, and these are not online, not real-time data. So do you plan to cooperate with the PuetNet?
When I started, PuetNet, DemoscIenCe just started, and PuetNet doesn't provide any application interface. So actually, this data is accessible now. So my work would be just to access the data again, and to integrate it. So yeah, as real-time data. But we have a huge graph already. So my data stock is about 53,000 artworks, something like that. And graph-based, we talk about over 12 million triples. So browsing through that data in real time is a challenge as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.